right, welcome everyone. We're going to give everyone just a minute to make sure everybody can join from Zoom and Whova. This is a hopeful future for military mental wellness. We'll start in just a second. How do I look, Michelle? Are we good to go?
Yes, I think so.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for sticking with us or joining us this afternoon. My name is Kimberly Somariba. I'm the Military Family and Program Support Specialist at NAMI New Hampshire. I also coordinate the annual conference, and I'm honored to have Major Ryan Short joining us today. Major Short is currently the Army National Guard Deputy Chief of Staff at the U.S. Army Center for Initial Military Training, located at Fort Eustis. The U.S. Army Center for Initial Military Training is the lead for implementation of the Holistic Health and Fitness Program, which is H2F, the only acronym that I can remember in Ryan's bio. And H2F aims to optimize soldiers through the 5 domains of physical readiness, which is nutritional readiness, mental readiness, spiritual readiness, and sleep readiness. Major Short is a member of the New Hampshire Army National Guard, where his assignments included being a platoon leader and a company commander in the 237th Military Police Company and an officer candidate school instructor, a 2013 deployment to Afghanistan. Major Short is also a member of the New Hampshire State Police from 2010 to 2022. And graduated from the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina, in 2008. Thank you, Major Short, for being with us today.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate the introduction. Sorry, there's a lot of words that go into a lot of our acronyms, but you did great. So I appreciate everybody's time. I've had the opportunity to jump in on a few of the calls or a few of the meetings earlier today. I've really enjoyed the back and forth in the days leading up to this. And really, it's kind of indicative of what we've seen with the rollout of H2F, is that there's a large population of people who just want to help the cause and to help soldiers. And that's really, at the end of the day, what H2F, or Holistic Health and Fitness, is all about, is taking care of soldiers. So what is H2F? You know, we talked about the domains: physical, nutritional, spiritual, mental, and sleep. Those are 5 interlocking domains that we think will play off of each other and support one another, so that if one is lagging, the others will help pick them up. So if you're, struggling with sleep, maybe increasing your physical activity will help with that. Or if you focus on sleep, it will help improve your physical activity. If you're struggling with mental health, maybe you need to get into the spiritual domain, which is not necessarily religious in nature, but more so finding a sense of self and higher purpose. And that could also in turn help your mental health. Or maybe it needs to, need to focus on sleep to help your mental health. So they all interlock and they all play off of each other. So that's kind of the bottom line up front with the whole program. But at the end of the day, what it really is, it is actually one of the largest, if not the largest, wellness initiatives in our nation's history. We are taking the entire Army and implementing this program to tackle issues that we all know plague the military, and get into the realm of prevention as opposed to reaction. And that kind of gets into where this all started. So 4 or 5 years ago is when we started hearing about the implementation of a program called Holistic Health and Fitness. It was actually the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, who was the Chief of Staff of the Army at the time. And so he was looking at how much it cost the Army to take care of soldiers after incidents had occurred, whether it was musculoskeletal injuries, mental health issues, et cetera. And we were talking, hundreds of millions of dollars annually for preventable issues. So he said, hey, why don't we invest some money on the front half and get into prevention? And he was well versed in this because there was a program in the Special Forces community called Thor 3 that used performance teams to focus on these domains, and they had some great return on investment with it. So he said, well, we should probably just do that for the whole Army. If we invest money on the front end, we're going to actually save money in the long run. So it may look like a big bill up front, but it's going to save us some money. It's going to take care of our people. We have issues with obesity. We have issues with mental health. We have issues with injuries. Let's see if we can prevent them. So that started the road of looking into how do we roll this out. A lot of it has been building the plane while we're flying it. So on the active duty side, they actually initiated a pilot mirroring what we knew from the professional sports world, Division I athletics, et cetera, where they built these performance teams that were comprised of strength coaches, occupational therapists, dietitians, athletic trainers, cognitive enhancement specialists, you name it. So they throw a whole team together to cover all the domains of a human, a whole human. And they're in the business of, it's a for-profit endeavor in Division I athletics and professional sports teams. So they had the data to show that this was effective. We know these are effective models. So we said, okay, that's what we're going to implement in the Army. So they actually did a pilot program back in about 2018 where they tested it in 30 battalions across the Army, to include one out of the National Guard, and they got positive return on investment. They saw better physical fitness scores. They actually saw that soldiers were more likely to convey behavioral health issues to like a strength coach, who's somebody that's out of uniform that just cares about their performance, and have those conversations about mental health. Obviously suicide being one of our biggest issues right now. And so from that pilot program, they said, okay, we are going to implement this across the total Army. So that's about when I stepped in. So I got in 2000, or I took the position at National Guard Bureau in 2018 of the program manager for the implementation of the Army Combat Fitness Test, or ACFT, which is a whole new fitness test for the Army. In about 2019, they said, hey, you're the ACFT guy. So we want you to spearhead this H2F thing for the Guard. And how is the Guard going to tackle this? So we looked at what the big Army was doing, and basically they were putting these performance teams out there. They were building some facilities. They were procuring a lot of equipment, and they have an audience there at all times because they're on active duty. We don't have that in the Guard. So we said, that model probably isn't going to work for us. So I traveled across the country, met with professional sports teams, Division I colleges, you name it. And what we found was, as we were going out and talking to these people, we were just information gathering. But what we found was that those audiences wanted to help. And then we said, oh, we may be onto something here. So we said, hey, like, we may not be able to do what the Army's doing and put a bunch of soldiers in these positions and make these performance teams, but we could probably lean on what's available to us locally. And that's what I liked about the presentation prior to mine, is they talked about basically pulling what you have around you and taking an inventory of what you already have and bringing those people together, breaking down silos and creating a team it's all trying to drive towards the same end state to get down to solving a problem. And so what we ended up doing in the Guard is telling the states, hey, start looking at that stuff. Start looking at your data, start looking at what's around you, start looking at partnerships with your local colleges, start looking at partnerships with mental health providers, start looking at partnerships with local law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs. What are they doing? They're having the same problems. And we really, as this grew, we found more and more states were becoming successful in finding local resources that we otherwise wouldn't have had access to if a program like this wasn't getting off the ground. So we took that and we said, hey, the Guard can actually probably lead innovation on this, because we are going to have access to these pools of people out there, grassroots, that we would never otherwise be able to hire, but we could partner with them. And we can come up with better, more efficient, more effective ways to do this. And that's all backed by the fact that industry has been doing, remote performance optimization for years, decades. So we know we can do it. And so that's what the states right now are tasked with, is going out and figuring out what works for them. We don't want to do a one-size-fits-all approach. We want the states to look at what their specific issues and concerns are. I'll use Alaska as an example. Alaska has a major suicide and mental health problem, primarily due to the 24 hours of darkness, 24 hours of light, and the breaking of the circadian rhythms. So it's a lot of sleep-based issues. If you look at New Hampshire National Guard and you look at the Alaska National Guard on paper, they look exactly the same. But if we were to roll out the same program to both states, it would miss the mark completely, because our issues related to our soldiers are far different than what they're experiencing in Alaska. And I actually got the chance to see that firsthand for a couple of weeks, and it was striking. So, how is this different than anything? I know that there's probably a lot of people on the call that are familiar with a lot of the prevention programs that have rolled out in the Army in the past. How is H2F any different? Well, one, like I said, we're tackling all the domains of the human and having them play off of each other. So we're not just focusing on mental health, we're focusing on things that support mental health as well. We're not just focusing on physical fitness, we're focusing on things that make them better and more physically fit. Additionally, we talk about removing the stigma. What we found with soldiers is that when you talk performance optimization, they're much more willing to come to the table and talk about their mental health or talk about their sleep, because there's no stigma associated with that. It's just saying, hey, this is something that will make you a better soldier. It'll make you a better version of yourself so that you can perform better. And everybody in the military wants to do their jobs better. And so I say all that to say that the key difference beyond that is that we have 230 plus prevention programs across the Army right now that some of you may be familiar with. And a lot of those were knee-jerk reactions to things, related to Iraq and Afghanistan, well-intended programs. The hard part is that none of those had evaluation metrics associated with them. So, there was no qualitative data, there was no quantitative data. And 20 years later with some of these programs, we can't really say whether or not they worked. We can say they were in place, we can say we tried, but we can't really show the data. H2F is coming onto the scene with very specific return on investment metrics that the Chief of Staff of the Army wants to see to ensure that the program is actually effective. If it doesn't translate to the end user, if it doesn't translate to the soldier, it's just going to be another program that dies on the vine. So we want this program to be a soldier that's made for soldiers, by soldiers, based on their feedback and supported by data. So that 10 years from now, we can say, hey, we implemented this and it worked, it did not work, we need to change course here, here, and here, whatever the case may be. But we don't want to end up in the same place that we are right now with 230 plus prevention programs that we really can't say that for. Not to say that those programs were bad, it's just a fact. And so, what we are really looking for now, so we had the quantitative data that the Chief of Staff of the Army wanted to see. We're also collecting those qualitative, or we had the quantitative data, but we're looking for those qualitative stories as well. So I'll give you an example related to mental health. Out at Fort Lewis, there was a soldier who was right on the edge of committing suicide, was experiencing some serious mental health concerns. And he had a strength coach that he was going to see. He was trying to get better on his ACFT. He's doing deadlifts one day, and he felt comfortable enough to just say, like, hey, I'm starting to feel a little better, but I just don't feel good. And then disclose that he was actually experiencing some suicidality or some suicidal thoughts. And that strength coach was able to act and get them to an occupational therapist, to then get them to behavioral health, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the whole idea is that whole team is there to support that soldier. And we have had a real problem in the past in the military, especially when it comes to mental health, of saying, well, here's a website with a bunch of resources on it. The data doesn't support that those are effective because soldiers are already busy. They don't really have the time or the interest in flipping through slides or going through and finding resources. So what H2F is, in another way that it's different, is it's putting qualified subject matter experts co-located, embedded with the soldiers to find these issues. And I heard on the last presentation, people should be able to pick up on, hey, somebody hasn't, kept up on their hygiene as much, or they've worn the same shirt the last 3 days. Leaders in the Army should be doing that, but these performance teams are also capable of doing that, and maybe even better, because they are there specifically to monitor the wellness of the soldier. So if we go forward, and we're looking forward to how the Guard does this, and this is where I think a lot of the people on the call maybe be able to provide some ideas. There's really 4 things that we see the Guard can do moving forward to implement H2F, and it's going to be very different. It's not, like I said, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but we think partnerships are going to be key. that partnerships, we've already seen them happening in a few states. We've actually have the Georgia Army National Guard who struck up a partnership with Georgia Southern. And because those are two state entities, Georgia Southern is able to provide them resources and basically create an internship pipeline for their students to get to practice whatever it is they're studying for with soldiers under the licenses of the university and the Georgia Army National Guard. And that is a massive cost savings to the Georgia Army National Guard. And it's also a huge benefit to those interns that are actually getting some hands-on time with soldiers, as opposed to maybe, doing some less fun internships somewhere else. Another avenue we see is contracting with local industries, local businesses. We've seen that in Massachusetts specifically. They contracted a company called O2X, which was started by a bunch of retired Navy SEALs, and they tackle all the domains of H2F. And we kind of call it H2F in a box. They show up with their team of highly qualified subject matter experts. They work with the state to see, hey, what are your specific needs and concerns? And they make a program tailor-made to the Massachusetts Army National Guard. And so what they found with that is they rolled it out to their high-risk soldiers. The program was so successful that it got so much good word of mouth that it went from high-risk soldiers to soldiers just saying, hey, I just want to be better. I'd like to come to the program. And so that's been a great use case of how a local industry contract can be beneficial to a National Guard state. Another thing we see is regional partnerships. So New England is a great example of a region that could help each other out. So Vermont Army National Guard helping New Hampshire Army National Guard out with something that maybe they've taken the lead on, or some resource that they have, and helping fill the gap for New Hampshire, and vice versa. Maine, New Hampshire, Mass, Vermont are all so close together. Rhode Island, they can help each other out. And so, and especially with something like NAMI, what I see is, this is a national level program. So if there's a Vermont version and a Maine version, all of a sudden you have a regional model specific to mental health that's built and ready to go to support states like that. And what we think is the fourth and most likely course of action for most of our states is a hybrid model, where maybe they have some partnerships to cover down on a few domains, maybe they have a few contracts to cover down on a few domains, and maybe they're part of a regional, agreement, local to them that fills in the rest. And we think, and what we're seeing is that's the most likely version. We have a lot of people in our ranks that are, physical therapists. We have a lot of people in our ranks that are, strength coaches. So while the states are taking inventory of what they have internally and breaking down silos within their own state, and I can tell you, coming from the New Hampshire Guard, I saw that. And what New Hampshire did specifically as a version of a hybrid model is they actually created a wellness directorate and broke down all the silos related to wellness and said, we're going to house them under the umbrella of H2F. And we've actually seen somewhere around 10 other states start to do that as well, and create whole new directorates and just bin everybody there. So if I'm a soldier in need, or I'm a commander or a leader looking to help out a soldier, I can send them to one place that's going to have everything that soldier needs in their time of need to get them the specific help that they're looking for. And so, I think that New Hampshire, and I'm eager to link everybody up who wants to be linked up with New Hampshire Army National Guard. And I know the program manager there personally, and I know General Michaelitis. He was actually my battalion commander at one point. He and I have talked extensively about H2F, and he is eager to implement this program and find good creative solutions. So I look forward to any continuing discussions. More than happy to give my email out. Now that I'm down at the Center for Initial Military Training, we own H2F for the entire Army. So I got to own it for a little bit, specific to the Army National Guard, but now I'm in a place where we own it for the entire Army. We're always looking for great opportunities. Wisconsin Army National Guard comes to mind. I heard motivational interviewing talked about earlier. They created a wellness program with the Air Guard and the Army Guard, and they incorporated motivational interviewing into a leaders course And they also incorporated it into a basic course for their soldiers, their high-risk soldiers, with really great return on investment metrics, to the point where we brought the Wisconsin Army National Guard to the Center for Initial Military Training to put on the leaders course. And now we're implementing motivational interviewing into our drill sergeant academy and teaching drill sergeants how to utilize motivational interviewing, develop intrinsic motivation, figure out what the problems behind the problems are with a trainee, and be able to have a conversation with them, as opposed to just trying to make them do something. And we think that that's actually going to help with attrition rates. It's going to help with mental health. It's going to help with all the things that we historically have seen in the basic training environment. And I'll leave you with this, just, we finally have some data on the effectiveness of holistic health and fitness in the Army, and these are active duty numbers. So 28 brigades have actually been fielded with these performance teams right now. The goal is to get to 110, looking to implement about 15 teams every year moving forward. But just in the early data that we have so far from the last couple of years, we saw 37% fewer suicides in brigades that had H2F. And then on the flip side of that, units that did not have H2F saw a 37% increase in suicides. There's also a 49% lower incidence of behavioral health referrals in resource brigades. And they were 21% more likely to believe that the Army cared about promoting health and wellness. They were twice as likely to recommend Army service, all those things. And all that is a byproduct of showing our soldiers that we care. And it shows, and there's a bunch of others related to other things too, less musculoskeletal injuries, better ACFT pass rates, all of that. But the specific to mental health and probably the most important return on investment metric is that we are seeing quantifiable return on investment with our soldiers related to mental health and mental wellness. So we're excited by this. We're really encouraged. We're excited to roll it out in the Guard and see what these states come up with as we empower them to be innovative and creative with their solutions. And I've really appreciated, I know I only have a half hour, so I wanted to open up some time for questions, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody here today, and truly encourage anybody with a good idea to throw it up to us, because we are very keen on taking ideas and running with them and trying things out, and just really at the end of the day, connecting the right people together to have a conversation and see what's possible. So with that, I know it's a lot, and there's a lot more we can go into. I could talk about this for hours, but I will open it up to questions, and I just really appreciate everybody's time and attention today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Those numbers are really encouraging, and that's like perfect wrap up for everything you had to say. You've answered some of these questions already in the Whova app, but for people who didn't see them, do you mind if I pose a couple to you?
Absolutely.
Good. Okay. Do you have more training for military families? Is there any way, does this program impact, or is it available to family members, or is this for service members only?
Yeah, so we've seen a few different takes on this. We think that reaching out and touching the families with H2F is important, because at the end of the day, the soldier has to go home. And so they should kind of be speaking the same language. If they come to work every day and it's this great encouraging environment, but at home they're not practicing the same wellness techniques and all that, it can be detrimental to the progress of the soldier, and it's detrimental to the family. So some states, at least on the nutritional side, have actually set up cooking classes for families to come in and learn how to cook healthy meals, because that is actually fuel. We see, again, reframing things as performance related. So proper eating is proper fueling, so that you can perform better. And so bringing families into the discussion about, hey, who cooks the meals in the house, and hey, maybe this could be a collaborative relationship building technique for you to learn how to cook together and cook healthy meals and make some simple food choices. Shopping on the outside of the grocery store as opposed to the middle aisles, and finding those fruits, vegetables, and whole food type items. So we've seen that, but we've also seen states that are starting to bring families into some of these classes, and it's an area that I can tell you that our commanding general, General Klein, he wants to see how we can get this to translate to families and get these types of trainings to families. At the end of the day, a lot of H2F is training and education. A lot of people don't know what they don't know. So we are 100% on board with finding innovative ways to bring the family into the discussion.
Thanks. Oh, somebody just popped one in. What about folks who have family members who don't speak or have a different language background, have a different first language?
So within their families specifically?
Correct, right. Like if the spouse or family member doesn't speak English, will the services could be accessible, I guess is the question.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually a really interesting question that I think is going to be a part of, at least on the guard side of the house, you know, those state by state individual characteristics. You know, it's funny because I'm down at Fort Sam right now, and they have the English as a second language program at Laughlin, and so you know, we in the Army do train people, you know, where English is their second language, on how to speak that better before they, how to speak English better before they go to basic training. But for family members, that is a huge roadblock when you start having conversations about mental health and wellness and just wellness in general. You know, I think that that's something that we should definitely take into account. I don't have a good answer for that other than to say that that's the first time I've heard that question. And I love that, because that means that that's a blind spot for us. And so how do we tackle that? Is that a service the Army needs to provide? Is that a service that we need to partner with somebody on? Is that a service we need to contract out? How do we make that work? You know, do we ensure that we target, you know, bilingual providers or SMEs in certain areas where there's a high demand? So yeah, that's actually a great question that I'm going to jot down as a do out for us to talk about.
Sure. I mean, it certainly would be isolating if you couldn't access such a great service. So that makes sense. We had a lot of folks who were really interested. They wanted to know how they could get in touch and share kind of, they have resources, they want to connect more. How do you want people to reach out?
Yeah, I can put my email in the chat,
Okay.
and by all means reach out. I'll put that in right now. And we are open to anything. If I had to tell you how many different companies that I've talked to, how many different initiatives that I've talked to that have a good idea, you know, it's got to be in the thousands at this point of conversations and sales pitches and all those. So we are open to all of that. I can be the central hub because you know, I can get people to where they, and that's kind of my role now, is to get the right people connected to the right people. So, you know, if it's something specific to New Hampshire, that's too easy. If it's something more, you know, or even if it's just another state in general, more than happy to link up with those states. Or if it's something that's just total Army, we're in the place to have those conversations too. So use me as a resource as much as you can, and you know, maybe we can make something happen that way.
Well, thank you so much, Major Short. I have one little like slide I'm going to try to share. My computer's been such a trickster today. Let's see if it goes up. There we go. And thank you everyone for being here. We have an evaluation we'll send out in an email probably tomorrow. This presentation was recorded. It'll be in the Whova app for the next 30 days, and then it'll move to the NAMI New Hampshire YouTube. So if you know somebody that has to see this that didn't make it today and you want to share, that'll be available. And like Major Short said, he put his email in the chat. So please, you know, keep the lines of communication open. We'd love to hear your ideas. And, you know, just on a personal note, that NAMI New Hampshire is made up of a ton of military family members. We have moms and spouses and veteran family members all on staff, and it's something that we care deeply about. So this is all just really encouraging, and we're just grateful for the work you're doing, and we can't wait to see what's next. So thanks again.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the time and appreciate all the energy.
Take care.
You too.